A scream tore through the wind, shrill, ragged, sudden. Then the sound of metal shearing against metal. A sickening, twisting impact that didn't stop with the first crunch. It dragged, groaned, like something massive trying to tear itself free. There was silence for a beat. Then chaos. Limbs flailed, people shouted. One girl tried to scream, but nothing came out. Blood spilled into the crevices of yellow-painted steel. The ride had stopped. But the nightmare had just begun. It was June 2nd, 2015, just after 2 p.m. at Alton Towers, a theme park nestled in the English countryside. Children ran through shaded walkways, couples queued hand in hand, and over by the X sector, the air throbbed with the low mechanical growl of a machine that had never been quite right. The Smiler was advertised as a mind-altering experience. 14 inversions, strobe lights, optical illusions, and a theme built around marmalization, a fictional process meant to scramble the brain. It was chaos wrapped in bolts and branding. But beneath the marketing was a ride with a troubled history, one that engineers had battled for 2 years. Faulty sensors, malfunctions, misfires. But it brought in crowds, and it stayed open. That afternoon, 16 passengers climbed into a train on the loading platform. Among them were Joe Pugh and Leah Washington, a young couple out for a spontaneous day of thrills. It was Leah's first time at Alton Towers. She was smiling, legs crossed, unaware she'd never walk the same again. The restraints locked down with a hiss. A dispatch tone sounded, and the train launched. It screamed up the first incline, dove through loops, spiraled through corkscrews. Riders yelled, some out of joy, others because they couldn't process what was happening. The Smiler didn't just flip you upside down, it spun you through a war zone of sensory violence. But up ahead, just out of sight from the station and most cameras, a test train had stalled. It was empty, static, stranded high on the track. The system knew. The computer flagged it instantly. Sensors screamed warnings. Train stopped. Section occupied. Do not dispatch. Inside the control booth, the alerts lit up. But they'd seen it all before. False flags. Glitches. The Smiler was notorious for misreporting. Operations paused the ride. Engineers were dispatched. 2 walked the catwalks, eyes trained on the rails. From their vantage point, they thought the track was clear. It wasn't. A call crackled over the radio, a miscommunication, one that never should have happened, one that would cost people their limbs. And with that, the override button was pressed. The stop signal was canceled, and the train, full of 16 passengers, was released into the path of a stalled car. The riders didn't know. They screamed through loops. They whirled through inversions. Then, as the train rounded a blind curve, the other car appeared. There was no time. The front row, Joe, Leah, and 3 others, saw the yellow body of the stalled train dead ahead. Their eyes widened. Muscles tensed. One tried to scream. Then the 2 trains collided at nearly 50 kilometers per hour. The impact was immediate and devastating. Steel collapsed inward like foil. The front chassis crumpled. Leah's legs were caught between 2 masses of unforgiving metal. One was shattered instantly. Joe's knees were crushed, his hands mangled as he instinctively braced against the bar. Another girl was thrown violently forward, the air filled with the sounds of screams, of twisting metal, of wet, horrible cracking. Everything stopped. The train sat suspended above the park, frozen in a place that should have been thrilling, but was now a crucible of human pain. Blood dripped between the floor panels. A man in row 3 was trying to reach the girl beside him who had gone limp. Someone kept whispering, "Help me," under their breath. Leah stayed conscious the entire time. She could feel everything. Her left leg, crushed and pinned, was beyond pain. It was a raw signal of destruction. Below, the ride operators were stunned. For several minutes, They didn't fully understand what had happened. Then the park's emergency protocols kicked in. But there was no easy fix for this. The victims were stuck, trapped more than 25 feet above the ground, their bodies folded into a structure never meant to hold this much stillness. It took 5 hours. 5 hours of fire crews using cutting tools, 5 hours of paramedics climbing ladders to administer painkillers, oxygen, comfort, 5 hours of blood loss, of agony, of silent stares toward the ground. One by one, the passengers were lowered down in rescue baskets. Leah's amputation was not immediate, but it was inevitable. Her left leg was too damaged to save. The muscle had been shredded, the bone crushed into fragments. Infection risk was high. She was 19. Joe was hospitalized with multiple fractures, broken hands, and long-term nerve damage. For months, he couldn't walk. He couldn't hold a pen. He had night terrors, and he was one of the lucky ones. The media descended. Footage of the stalled cars, the mangled front row, and emergency workers suspended in midair flooded the airwaves. The public demanded answers. The health and safety executive launched an investigation, and what they found wasn't just negligence. It was systemic. The ride had a documented history of problems. In 2013, a support structure detached mid-ride. In 2014, wheels fell off while in motion. In early 2015, the same stalled car scenario had happened before. But that time, the automatic block system caught it. This time, it didn't. Or rather, it did, and a human overrode it. The operator had received multiple stop warnings, but under pressure to maintain ride throughput and avoid delays, those warnings had become routine. Engineers were taught to clear the system and reset. No one had meant to hurt anyone, but everyone assumed someone else had checked. The HSE report concluded that Merlin Entertainments, the parent company of Alton Towers, had failed to implement proper risk assessment procedures. Staff weren't adequately trained on fault protocol. Ride engineers hadn't been briefed on prior similar incidents. Communication between departments was sloppy, informal, and reliant on verbal confirmations. The result was a £5 million fine, the largest ever imposed for a UK amusement park incident. But no money could undo what had happened. Leah Washington had to learn to walk again. Her modeling dreams collapsed. She suffered infections, multiple surgeries, and still lives with pain every day. But she became a voice, open, honest, visible. She didn't hide her prosthetic. She didn't shrink. Joe and Leah eventually split up, but their story remains forever entwined in steel and trauma. Other victims, like Vicky Balk, lost limbs too. She was only 20. Her leg was amputated through the knee. For years, she battled with depression and fear of public spaces. She later said that the thing no one tells you about amputations is that you grieve your own body like a death. The Smiler reopened in 2016. It was repainted, rebranded, new signs, new safety features, a new narrative. But the ride never truly shed its past. To this day, people who board the Smiler are greeted with upbeat music and hypnotic lights. But if you look closely, you might spot someone flinching near the front row. Someone watching the track just a little too carefully. Because no one forgets. Not the victims. Not the staff who froze that day. Not the rescuers who carried bleeding bodies down from the sky. And not the engineers who pushed that button, believing it was safe. Safety wasn't bypassed. It was overwritten. This was not a mechanical failure. It was a failure of culture, of procedure, of priority. The system worked. It told them something was wrong. But in a place where speed matters more than caution, where queues are more dangerous to profits than collisions, and where accidents are dismissed until they are undeniable, warnings become background noise, and people pay the price. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.